I think the wife must have cooked something really nice because I can smell oven baked, maybe something oven baked. That'd be nice. You can see if there is another one with her. What is it, Professor Eleanor Janega? Professor Janega, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it.
Life in the medieval period looked like lots of different things to lots of different people. Your place in society could dictate everything, from what food you ate, where you could go, how educated you were, and even how long you were likely to live for. Across this series, we'll discover what life was like for those that worked, those that earned, those that learned, and those that played in medieval England.
Hey, that was nice. So this is like proper documentary style. This is not just a video, this is a full documentary. 1 hour and 38 minutes. We're just gonna... Okay, I'm not a huge fan of epic sounding music, by the way, but that's just me. Part 1, Peasants and Landlords. Yeah.
Today we're here at Denny Abbey, which is a really exciting place to think about the various strands of medieval society.
Okay.
In the fields around the Abbey, you would have peasants working. Peasants make up about 80% of the European population in the medieval period. And they are out in the fields growing the crops necessary for everybody to survive and for grand places like Denny Abbey to keep going. So if we're going to talk about peasants, what is a peasant? It doesn't just mean a poor person or someone who's lowly, which is kind of the way that we use it now. A peasant very specifically means a farmer. It's somebody who is tied to the land and they're out there farming. And
she's absolutely right, of course. Yeah, medieval society is, if you want to simplify it, you can divide it in the peasants. They are the ones that provide the food to supplement the bodies. Then you have the priests. They are the ones that provide the spiritual food to supplement the faith. And then you have, and then again, that's not the only thing they do because they are the ones that are writing down all the things. So a lot of the learning happens in monastery contexts. So kind of like when we say, because you remember that the literate society was the ecclesiastical together with the aristocrats. So all of that goes together as the learning. They are the ones that provide that. And then the military people, the knights, the men-at-arms, the archers, the billmen, the crossbowmen, and they are the ones that protect the other two so that the other two classes can continue to do what they do. And that's how society functioned. It's like a sort of triangular society in a way. There is a lot that can be said about medieval peasants. The taxes are insane. The taxes. I'll tell you. I think she's going to say it. She doesn't say it though. I'm telling you about the taxes because it's mind-blowing.
It's the great majority of people in medieval Europe. 80% of the European medieval population as a whole are peasants. Underneath that, 70% of the European population are serfs, which means that they are peasants who are unfree or tied to the land.
Yeah.
They live and work on strips of land that they rent from someone, a landlord, and they can't just decide that they want to move. They are seen as almost property in parcel with the land. So say a great lord or something inherits a manor, it's also assumed that they inherit the people that live on the manor as well. That sounds pretty bad, and to be honest, it is pretty bad. Being unfree isn't anybody's first choice. However, there are some rights that kind of go along with that as well. So you can't move down the road, but also your landlord can't kick you off your land.
Yes.
You are paying rent, but it is considered to be something that's in your family, and generations of serfs will pass the same land down through their family. So if serfs are tied to the land and they're paying rent to landlords, what is a landlord?
Since we're moving to the landlord, I want to add, serfs are not slaves. And the difference is that you choose to go into this contract freely, usually. There are exceptions. But generally speaking, of course, a slave usually doesn't, in the majority of cases, doesn't choose to become a slave. There are, one could argue, some situation when you are in extreme debt that you can choose to go into either indentured servitude, and we can look at those as exceptions, but a lot of the times, if you're a slave, it's against your will. And it has to do with either slave trade, or it has to do with conquest, right? But instead, when it comes to servitude, a lot of the times you have the freedom to choose, I want to do this because I've got nothing else to do anyways. So I want to do this because you can make a profit. If you're good, if you're successful, if God blesses you with bountiful land and then crops, then after you pay all of your taxes, you give the parts to the Lord, you can keep some of that and you can become wealthy up to a certain extent as a farmer. And in general, you can support yourself, your family, and all the rest. It's something to do. It's that. So you could choose to do that, but once you have decided you become like you're writing the contract, then you're bound.
It's kind of in the name. The Lord is the pejorative here. So a lot of people who are landlords come from the nobility and noble houses. And we'll talk more about those later as well. But to be a landlord doesn't necessarily mean that one is a lord. Oftentimes, a landlord could be another peasant who is free and very well-to-do, or quite often, the church.
Yep.
On the one hand, medieval peasants in the countryside are all good Christians. So they're going to be happy that there are people in the Abbey praying for their souls.
Yeah.
On the other hand, they're the ones that pay for all of this. The Abbey is also not doing their own farming. If you're spending all day...
They do make the ale, though. So if you're having a nice drink, you better say thank you to the priests. The monks, should I say, not the priests, the monks. Massive production of ale. I mean, at one point in the Middle Ages, alewives started producing their own ale as well, but a lot of the ale was made in monasteries.
A long praying, or you're a retired monk like the Knights Templar, you're not going to be the one out in the fields plowing. It's the peasants who do the actual work that sustains the Abbey. It's also interesting because since the Abbey is enclosed, this is as close as any average medieval peasant would actually get to the Abbey itself. You see this grand edifice that you're paying for, and you know that people are praying in it, but it's never something that you're going to be able to see from the inside.
They did work, though. I mean, they didn't work the land. She's absolutely correct. I just wanted to underline, ora et labora. They did do work. It's just that they did a different type of work, usually more sophisticated. You were saying so cool that she's out in the field showing the places. Absolutely. Absolutely.
As we'll see, tensions like this eventually reach a boiling point. Peasants get really tired with their specific lot in life and the idea that they should simply be paying for everything around them with their own sweat.
We can sympathize.
Farming in the medieval period is very interesting, I promise. This is because there are a lot of really big innovations that happen in the medieval period in terms of technology.
Yes.
Here is a really cool bit of medieval innovation. It's a causeway. What it is a raised bit of road that allows peasants to move their goods back and forth across the farmland here. As you can tell from all of the water behind me, here in the fens, it used to mostly be a bunch of marshes. A really neat medieval innovation is the draining of those marshes and turning them into arable land. It wasn't until the high medieval period that people actually knew how to do this. So previous to this, the entire fenland was really mostly unusable. When we talk about peasants and farming, and we're on historical farmland like this, it's really easy to forget that this isn't actually how things always looked for medieval farmers. What we see here is an example of what we call enclosed farming. When we see things like hedgerows and fences, that indicates that it's owned by one farmer who owns that land. That's not how farming works in the medieval period. The way that landlords kind of divvy out land for the various serfs and peasants that they oversee is generally through what we call the open field system. They've got 2 or 3 large fields.
She's so good. And also, massive shout out to the editor, because he's really making this very nice to follow.
And then they might also have a common grazing ground for stuff like animals and livestock.
Yeah.
They might also, if they're particularly well-to-do, have a couple of mill ponds so they can grind their own wheat into flour. And they might also have some fishing rights on those ponds as well. The way that land is then divided up further is through renting out the various strips of the fields into what are called cellions. So each family will have a certain number of cellions that they are responsible for tilling over time. And these will be passed down through generations in the same family, although they do pay rent to the landlord overall.
Imagine how good they would have been when you've been doing this for generations. Like there must have been. It's a bit like when you look at, on a separate type of skill, medieval sewing. And when you look at, like, there are these very well preserved 15th century, late 14th century doublets. And when you see the precision of the stitching and knitting, should I say, looks machine made. It really does. It looks machine made. Because people that did this, and that's all they did, manually, and have been doing it for generations. So there is also experiential knowledge accumulated over time. So when dad teaches whatever he learned from granddad and improved upon, and he teaches it to his son, he's really good at it, or his daughter, when it comes to knitting. They're really good at it. They're really good at it. And that's crazy. And that's something that it doesn't just have to do with the Middle Ages, doesn't just have to do with classical antiquity. Think of the experiential knowledge of someone from the Neolithic period, the Stone Age, knappers. Like the number of generations of people that really knew the best rocks, the best way to hit that rock, to use the flint, but don't use it this way, and move it that way, and put your leg this way, and this is how we do it. And that's where we go and get them, because we know this area like the back of our hands, because we've been doing this for like 75 generations. It's crazy if you think about it.
In order to farm them. Beyond draining fenlands and turning it into arable land, there's also a really cool medieval farming invention called the three-field system. The three-field system is when you alternate various strips of land and cultivate different things on it. So one year you might grow a crop that particularly strips a lot of...
Yeah, rotations. I think they still do this. There is my actual grandfather from my wife's side, he's from Alabama, and he owns land, and he has told me about it, how they change from planting cotton to planting sweet corn. It's just that I haven't got a clue what he said, because I cannot understand him. I just can't understand him. An old man from Alabama, no clue. That to me just sounds da 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 da. That's what it sounds to me. I don't even recognize a single word. I think at one point he must have said John Wayne. I don't know why.
Nitrogen out of the soil. The next year, you would then allow that same strip of land to go fallow and just take a bit of a break.
Right.
Then the year after that, you would plant a crop, something like alfalfa, that puts a lot of nitrogen back into the soil. Wow. Then you can rotate in your crop that is going to pull a lot of nitrogen out again. This allows you to constantly be using land and constantly farming something without exhausting anything completely.
Isn't that crazy? Because now scientifically we can know it's the nitrogen, it's this and that's the chemical reaction. They didn't know that, but it doesn't matter, because there is a lot of stuff that you know, even if you don't understand the biology of it or the chemistry of it or the physics of it, you can still understand cause and effect, particularly when you have a massive sample of input. So you keep trying, oh, this is what works, this is what happens if we do this way. You can really figure out stuff that it's like, even though you don't understand the molecules, you can still figure out stuff that then surprises us. We're like, how did they even know that? We'll try that for a couple of 100 years. You'll figure it out.
This is important when you have really highly cultivated areas of land and a lot of people attempting to live off exactly the same parcels.
Yeah.
So what are people farming? It really depends on the region that you're in. We know that they are farming wheat, barley, oats, rye, peas, and what are called vetches. Vetches are a kind of pea-adjacent crop that you kind of feed to horses and cattle and stuff like that. They're very important because they are one of those nitrogen-rich crops, which is going to enhance your soil after you've leached it out with a bunch of wheat. They're also raising livestock. So they're raising cattle, they're raising horses, they're raising pigs, all types of poultry. And excitingly,
apologies to the pigs.
Sheep. Luckily for medieval people, one of the best things that you can do with land that's been recently reclaimed is run sheep through it. Sheep are particularly important because they are covered in the miracle fiber that stays warm even when it's wet, wool. And wool is one of the most important and widely traded commodities in the medieval world. There are all sorts of trade routes which spring up specifically just to trade wool back and forth. What does this mean for peasants? Well, you can actually become pretty rich trading wool. Yep. This is especially true in England in the 14th century, when England, well, London more specifically, joins what's called the Hanseatic League. The Hanseatic League are a number of northern European towns, kind of along the North Sea and in the Baltic Sea, that trade wool and cloth back and forth. These are long international routes, and it's a good way to make very good money if you're a peasant. We do know that there are rich peasants, so they are not only getting by, but they're doing pretty well for themselves. And this might be through trading the actual vegetables. It might be through trading wool, or it might be engaging in other industries that are considered cottage, like brewing or weaving. And
did you know that, since we're talking about that, what was I going to say? It'll come back.
In fact, that's where we get the term cottage industry. It's something that's...
Sorry, it came back. Vegetable, if you had a bunch of vegetables put on a medieval table, a lot of the colors would not be the same as what we use today. Carrots were purple because the orange carrot, it's something that happens, I believe it's in the late 16th century is when that mutation happens. So carrots before would have been purple. And there are plenty of other, actually purple would have been quite common as a color. Also because it's a color that we said sometimes it went away on accident and other times we did it on purpose because the chemical component that makes a vegetable purple sometimes doesn't taste very nice. So there were situations in which we were like, we gotta selectively get rid of that. There are plenty of medieval fruits and vegetables that you could still recognize them, but they wouldn't look the way you'd think. And so not only that, but then another aspect would be regional availability, because now we're used in the modern time to eat anything whenever we want. And that's not how medieval life would have been. You would have eaten seasonal food, always, and regional food. So if you are in the north, like Scandinavia, Nordic countries, butter would have been your fat for cooking. But in the Mediterranean, you can imagine that oil would have been more common as a fat for cooking. And so it's just fascinating because sometimes even in video games you see the vegetables and the availability of foods, and if it's medieval, if it's fantasy, it doesn't matter, but if it's medieval, you'd be like, it wouldn't look anything like that table.
Someone might be doing in their cottage, unsurprisingly. So if you're growing a bunch of sheep, maybe you're also carding that wool and you're weaving it into cloth.
Look at that.
Interestingly, both brewing and weaving are specific feminine industries. You know, they were out there helping to till the land, certainly.
Except for the monks.
But they might also be doing a second shift on top of that, making things like cloth and beer that can also be sold at market.
Yes. They were not witches. That's not the beginning of... There are some nonsense articles out there that tell you... So the idea of the witch with the cauldron comes from the medieval alewife, because they had those cauldrons with a brew that they were making ale. Nonsense. There is no historical validity to those claims. It has not... No.
This absolutely gorgeous medieval barn is a wonderful reminder of how important farm animals are in the medieval period. Because let's remember, this is owned by the Abbey. Mm-hmm. So even monks and nuns are keeping their own cows, their own sheep, their own horses, and that's the sort of thing they could even do themselves. They don't necessarily need peasants to do it. If you want milk and butter, that isn't something you can get from the store in the medieval period. You've got to get it from a cow. It reminds us that all communities probably have their own farm animals in the countryside. So you have a really great and impressive barn like this to keep your animals inside, and to also keep crops like hay for the winter. Farm animals aren't just important because of...
Man, they walled all the windows. I wonder if this is modern. This is probably modern.
...the products that they can give you. Farm animals in their own right are a type of machinery in the medieval period. And they also change over time in terms of what the most popular animal to use for what is. In the earlier medieval period, we start to see the heavy plow come into use. It's a great new technology that allows you to slice through the heavier, more clay-based soils that we have in Northern Europe. The heavy plow, as the name indicates, is kind of heavy. So in order to pull one, you're going to use teams of oxen. The oxen will have what we call an ox collar over their neck. This allows them to pull the plow along with the human behind it guiding it through the fields. Later in the medieval period, however,
that's Age of Empires 2 right there.
We come up with the horse collar. A horse collar means that you can use horses to plow instead of oxen. Previous to the invention of the horse collar, we weren't exactly sure how to have a horse pull a plow without suffocating them. Horses, although they are not as strong as oxen, are much faster, so they can pull a plow faster through a field, and it actually speeds the work up. Horses are also really useful in their own right. You can use them for transportation. You can use oxen to pull carts, but because they tire more easily, it's better to use horses.
Can you imagine the physicality of these people? So like we, in comparison, will literally, we sit, like look at my job particularly, I'm just sitting here for like 4 hours in a row, looking at the camera, watching this with you, having a great time. By the way, thank you for the subscriptions on Twitch. And then what am I going to do? After I'm done with this, I'm going to go downstairs. Maybe we order a pizza with my wife, watch a movie. We're sitting again. Then I'm going to come upstairs and be like, oh, finally, I'm free. Well, let me make the thumbnails for tomorrow. I'm sitting again. And then I'm like, finally, I'm done. Let me play some Sega Genesis. I'm sitting again. So and then let's imagine that we're like, no, you know what? I want to go out. I'm too sedentary. Let's sit in a car. Instead, to go whatever the heck. Medieval people were so active. I really think they would have been leaner in general, not just because of dietary, clearly more healthy food, but also because of this, that even if you had a horse, you still, get on a horse. And by the way, you don't really sit on a horse from a medieval perspective. You do, but if you look at the difference between, and I would strongly suggest Modern History TV when it comes to this kind of topics, much more knowledgeable than me. But in general, when you look at a knight who is sitting on horseback, they look like they're standing, in fact. It looks, their weight is on the back of the animal, but then their legs are completely straight as they reach the stirrups. So it looks like they're standing. It's a different type of riding. They don't sit like a motorcycle with your knees bent. I could see if I can find iconography to show you that, but I think you can imagine what I'm talking about. So once again, the physicality of medieval people must have been insane.
So if you have a horse collar instead of an ox collar, it means that you can reduce the amount of livestock that you have for plowing, and the livestock that you have is a little more useful. Peasantry generally also has one hitch in that it's definitively tied to nature. You can't make wheat sprout in January, so you're always going to have to be doing things at a specific time of year that benefit that. It doesn't matter how hard you try, it's not going to be time to slaughter a pig in the middle of July. It just doesn't work that way. Another huge advantage that people in the medieval period have, at least in the high and late medieval period, is something that we call the medieval warm period. This spans from about the year 900 to about the year 1300, where Europe experiences a particularly warm and stable climate. So suddenly, winters are a little bit shorter, summers are a little bit longer, and you have a larger growing period for things. We see this reflected in stuff like what is called the labors of the year. It's a typical medieval art trope. And if you see pictures of December, for example, you'll see peasants engaging in their normal December activities, which are slaughtering pigs and baking bread. But there's no snow on the ground. In conjunction with the great medieval developments of the new tech, this means more food for more people and more happy peasants.
And population growth. You were saying, that's how I ride with my broken tailbone. So sorry that happened to you. That must not be easy to deal with. I did many time growing up. We owned about 4 milk cows. People who were brought up in a farm, or in general know, in the modern sense, more of a rural way of life as opposed to city people like me, actually probably have a better connection to the way medieval people lived, including people in the cities and the castles. Because, if you live in a castle, of course, your life is a lot easier. But then again, not everyone who lives in a castle is the freaking prince. So even a knight had to train, like a lot. And if you're not a knight and you're a squire, or even if you're not a squire, you're a page, you're not a squire, you're a cook in the freaking, or one of the hunters. Your life, even if it's not like our city life, even if you live in a city, even if you live in a castle. And very cool. How are you guys doing? Depends on the activity, totally. The stamina must have been off the charts, I agree. Yeah. Maybe not. Maybe only the Romans. I mean, professional Roman soldiers probably would have had even better stamina than that. But in general, I agree. Absolutely. Wool releases heat when it gets wet. I did not know that, discount. Soup. And you were talking Al Capone there on cake. Very cool. Let's continue.
These new technologies are very advanced, and it's the most advanced that Europe had ever been up to this point. Romans, for as much as they did do that is very interesting, couldn't come up with this. They did not have heavy plows, they did not have horse collars, and they did not have the three-field system. Suddenly, places like Germany or England can sustain much larger populations because they have peasants who are able to feed people using inventions like the horse collar, like the three-field system, and like the heavy plow. This is real tech, and it's a real advancement for society as a whole.
Be interesting to see how quickly it spread.
We have one very interesting family, the Collinses, who are a great example of how peasants can really rise in the world.
Okay.
We first meet them through the means of Thomas Collins, the head of the family. He's a very well-to-do peasant. When we first meet him in the 1270s, we see that he owns half a virgate of land, which means about 15 acres or so. That's a lot of land. He also raises livestock like cattle and sheep, and some geese, which are a very nice little cash crop at Christmas or Michaelmas. Everybody likes to eat a goose. So he's doing extremely well. And we know also that his wife is brewing beer. So
Good woman.
We know that there's a lot of money coming in for him. And he's definitely someone that you and I would class as well-to-do, if not simply middle class. All of this
maybe upper middle class.
Eventually changes, though, when we next catch up with him.
Okay.
There's a gap in the records from about 1282 to 1292. And when we see Thomas again, his fortunes have come down slightly.
Damn it. I mean, I love the 80s and the 90s, but this guy, probably not.
This was a man who was super well connected in his community. He was serving as a pledge. A pledge would mean that if someone else says, oh, I owe some money, Thomas would say, he's good for it and I will put my own land up. Thomas can't be a pledge anymore. Why? He's in debt. Oh. And he's in pretty serious debt.
Oh no.
He comes to our attention through the court records because there's someone called Walter from Oldbury who sues Thomas because he owes him 5 shillings. Sounds probably like not much money, but for Thomas at the time, this is a real problem because he can't pay 5 shillings back. He's mortgaged all of his crops to someone else to pay off other debts. Mortgaging your crops is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's like mortgaging your house now. You'll say, okay, well, I've got my barley crop coming in the autumn, and so after I take that to market, you will get the proceeds from that barley if you give me money now. Walter is demanding his 5 shillings, Thomas can't pay it back, and Thomas is in a real dilemma here. It means that he has to sell one of the only things he possibly can, his land. But of course, Thomas doesn't own his land. He is a serf. Technically, the Abbey owns his land. So the only person that he can sell his land to is the Abbey. This is a really difficult circumstance to be in because obviously you can't demand, the best price possible. It's just whatever the Abbey will give you. For the land that Thomas holds, the Abbey gives him £2. Now, that definitely covers his debt to Walter, it covers his other debts, but it also means that the family are in real trouble now. There's 9 mouths to feed, and there's...
Come on, monks, you could have given him a little more, am I right? I'm sympathizing with Thomas.
Suddenly having to do so based only on Thomas's wife's land that she brought into the marriage through her dowry. This is interesting because it does show us that peasant women even do have some power and some control over their circumstances. Land that comes into a marriage is still their land, and Thomas's wife can't be forced to sell it if she needs to. They still need to make some money somehow, and the only real way to do that is if they can farm and take part in the generalized agricultural community that they live in.
And we complain. Like, these people are like, let's go. Well, they did get some decent holidays in the Middle Ages. We'll have to give them that. But I guess when you are drowning in debt, you don't really want the holidays. So imagine like these people having to go, like it's pouring down, or maybe like it's super hot, and they're like, oh, we gotta do this, come on, and then all of that money's going into paying the debt. Goodness gracious. And then we complain, and I'm like, oh, today I need to stream. I'm a little tired because I didn't sleep well. It's good.
Fortunately, it seems like that is not enough to ever get Thomas back to the same standing in the community that he enjoyed. He dies in the year 1312, and when he does, he's massively in debt again.
Damn it.
His lands do pass to his wife and daughters, only 2 of whom have been married off, so you still got 6 women who need to be supported somehow. If we look at for any records of them, by the year 1319, all of the Collins sisters are gone. We're not exactly sure what happened. It could be that all the Collins sisters simply moved away. That would be possible for them because they're women. They might be tied to the land, But the Abbey is going to be less interested in forcing them to stay in place
course.
because they'll be seen as less productive peasants.
Yeah.
If they need help tilling their crops, for example, why not just get some men in there to do it for them, people who don't have to ask for help?
Of course.
So it might be that they decide to try their luck somewhere else and simply moved away. Very unfortunately also, it's equally as possible that they simply all died. From the years 1317 to 1319, there was a continent-wide disaster called the Great Famine.
Yeah.
As the name indicates, there simply wasn't enough food to go around. The Great Famine is a very serious event. It really does hurt the majority of the population in Europe, and we do see a huge drop in population at the time. The Collins sisters very well may have fallen victim to this.
Of course. You were saying that the £2 that we received, it's about 2 years' wages for a labourer. Thank you for that piece of information. Appreciate that. 9 months sounds like a family. It does, doesn't it? Do or die is part of your general reasoning when you live that lifestyle. Absolutely. Absolutely.
In the 1300s, we exit the medieval warm period. The temperature begins to drop and Europe begins sliding into what we call the Little Ice Age. We can see again in medieval paintings like the Labours of the Year, suddenly we have December scenes of peasants slaughtering pigs in the snow instead of in the mud. So it means that we do know that the winters are colder and longer. But also there's been 2 years of extensively heavy rains and flooding. The crops simply can't grow. So there's a large mortality across the continent because there just isn't enough food to go around.
That's crazy.
This impacts peasants more than it impacts other layers of society. Say you're the local abbey. Their risk is sort of spread out over all of the peasants that they oversee. Those peasants still have to pay them their rent, they still have to pay them their crops. So they're getting fewer crops in, but it's still some of everybody's crops instead of being completely dependent on one specific patch of land. So when we think about peasants, we think of them as largely agrarian and in the countryside. For a good reason, you sort of have to do your farming in the countryside. However, that doesn't mean that they don't have any links to London itself. Just behind me, the Clothfair Street opens up onto the Smithfield. In the medieval period, this might actually have been referred to as the Smooth Field, and it's where peasants would bring their cattle, sheep, pigs, in order to be slaughtered and sold at market.
Yeah.
From the peasant's perspective, Smithfield is also an...
There are a lot of places, by the way, that take the name from what was happening in those roads, and there are still, even today, some street names in London that are really funny because they're really basically telling you what that road or that street was used for in the medieval period. It's still a thing, and as I say, some are funny depending on the occupation we're talking about.
Extraordinarily important place because it's the scene of one of the most important parts of the Peasants' Rebellion.
Yeah.
The Peasants' Rebellion in England is part of a series of peasants' rebellions that we see in the 14th century across the continent. Here in England, it's led by a man named Wat Tyler. Wat Tyler is a peasant himself, but he's someone who thinks that he sees a world where peasants can take greater control. He's one of the first people that really starts arguing that there are generalized rights of men as a whole, and that peasants are more than just a sort of implement to till your land. They're people who deserve the same rights as we do.
I'm not sure if it was that deep into people deserve the same rights as you do, but I get it. That sounds a little modern, but fine.
Also attached to Wat Tyler's rebellion is a man called John Ball. He's a popular preacher. There's a very famous quote often attributed to John Ball that we think might be spurious, which is, "When Adam delved and Eve span, who was then a gentleman?" This idea is that Adam and Eve were not noble, everyone has the same rights in God's eyes, so why is it that peasants have such a much more difficult shape in society? The peasants get together and they have an actual military rebellion. They famously come to London and besiege it. And they do really well, surprisingly. They take over London, they burn down the Savoy Palace, which is in the place of the Savoy here. Instead of looting all the goods from the Savoy Palace, though, they burn them all. They're not here to steal, they want to start a new society where everyone is on equal footing. They then come and meet up with the Lord Mayor of London on the Smithfield, led by their leader, Wat Tyler. Here, it's unclear exactly what happened.
Man, look at that, Valchian.
But some kind of scuffle breaks out and Wat Tyler is stabbed. He ends up dying. This is a huge blow to the Peasants' Rebellion because without a leader, they become much more fractious. There's no one really driving them forward with a real vision at this point in time. Eventually, the peasants are completely broken. King Richard II gives a very famous speech where he tells the peasants that they are rustics.
See what I was telling you? Look at the iconography. It looks like he's standing. His leg completely straight. It's exactly what I was telling you. In fact, that's another thing about medieval saddles. They tend to be higher here and here. They function quite differently to modern saddles, but look at that. That's exactly what I was telling you.
And rustics, they will remain. He wants to make a point that peasants simply cannot see themselves as on equal footing with nobles or indeed himself, the king. They exist in order to give the nobility goods, and they have to know their place as rusticated. Here on the side of Smithfield Market, we finally have a memorial to the Peasants' Rebellion. I say now because it wasn't until 2015 that we had anything at all memorializing the Peasants' Revolt. This is despite the fact that the Peasants' Rebellion was something that affected the largest number of people in the 14th century at the time. I know I keep saying this, but it's 80% of the European population that are peasants. So the Peasants' Rebellion is one of the most important things in the lives of average people in England in the 14th century.
Yep, fair.
Despite this, we still don't tend to treat peasants as though they're worthy of remembrance or important enough for it.
That is true, though. We do tend to, when we study history, remember the names and the deeds of powerful people, popes, kings, princes, knights, aristocrats, and we don't know anything about who invented bread or who was the first one to domesticate rice and effectively feed billions and billions and billions of people throughout history. And we don't know who the heck did that. Sometimes I do wish that we spent a little more time onto the common man and the common woman. And in fact, that's why I appreciate when there are those video games that you play as a common person. And I kind of like it when it's like that. Or even if you start as that and then you become the hero and then you become super powerful, that's okay. It's kind of interesting. And sometimes I do feel that there are a lot of inventions that have shaped our history entirely as a species that could be credited to someone, but nobody wrote it down. And yet we remember names like Hitler. And I wish we didn't. Or Stalin, because this channel is fair. We remember their names instead of freaking forgetting them. But then again, it's good not to forget the awful either, because we don't want to repeat it. So it's fine. But I hated that everyone knows who freaking Stalin was, regardless of what he did. But no one knows who invented bread first. It is one of those things, I suppose. Very good video as usual. 21 minutes and 54. I think that's kind of what I'm going to leave it with this. But it's a very good video. We're going to give it a like. And if you liked it, since they put all of the production, she took the plane, so she went there, she prepared the presentation. It's only fair that they get the view and a comment. So if you do like it and you want to finish it, do check out the original video, give him a subscription, give him a comment. I think that's fine. And yeah, I mean, I thought that was pretty good. A very good video. I'm going to write it down that we did that. And let me just double check. Yes. Excellent. Okay, so I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover with today's stream, but let me check the numbers very quickly before let me see. Yeah. Okay. So check the numbers. Very nice. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at this for the stream for today. We did about 3 hours and a half. I think I kind of want to leave the streams between 3 to 4 hours. And I will see you again tomorrow at the same time. So 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, live on Twitch, Rumble and Kick. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And I'm going to go make some food because I'm starting to get a little hungry. Yeah, so thank you. And have a great evening, guys. Oh, wait. Thank you. What's your name? I got to say that. One moment. Thank you so much, the subs guy again for tifting about my Metatron-ish, for gifting the subscription. I really appreciate that. For Twitch, man, Twitch today was really good. I hope it continues that way. We're gonna grow. We're gonna grow Twitch. And once again, thank you guys. So see you tomorrow, 3:30, same time, same place. Have a good one. And I'm gonna first stop kick, as we always do. Bye kick. Then we're gonna stop Rambo. Thank you so much. Last but not least, it is Twitch. Have a good one, guys.